Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another LinkedIn Live. Today, we have a very special show for you. We're excited to be collaborating with our good friend Christopher Lind, who will be hosting a new series that we're calling Learning Tech Talks. Now, to kick things off, we need to make sure we started things with a bang. So today, we're going to be joined by David James, who's a Chief Learning Officer at Looop, who's also the host of the Learning and Development podcast. Welcome, everyone. How are you, Christopher? How are you, David?
Hey, good. Thank you very much, Chris.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm glad to have two fellow podcasters on the show. So this makes.
I like the dramatic gesture. That's really helpful.
Just like that.
That is good.
I was practicing that for like.
Can
10
you throw
minutes
glitter?
beforehand. Oh, next time.
Yeah.
No, Ivan's going to add in a special effect where it like explodes on the screen. So when I do that next time, it'll be fine.
There you go.
Well, Christopher, give everyone a bit of an overview of what they can expect from the Learning Tech Talk series. And then we'll jump in.
And it's funny. It's funny to me to think, we just started talking about this. It wasn't even that long ago, and here we are going live with Learning Tech Talks. And in terms of what we're trying to do, and really this is a passion point for me, is really to demystify the landscape of learning technology, because there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of stuff changing, and I think for a lot of folks it's very confusing. So I'm excited to have David, who we've been friends for a while, talking. I think we've shared a lot of conversations about thought leadership and learning and development, but today we want to take it out of the ethereal and actually get practical with the actual platform. So thanks for joining, David. And I guess to kind of kick it off, before we get into the platform, I'd love to just hear what took you to Loop and a little bit about that.
Thanks, Christopher. What brought me to Loop? I think there was a problem that needed to be solved. I was 15 years in-house. I suppose most notably, I spent 8 years at Disney. I was Director of Learning, Talent and OD for Europe, Middle East and Africa. Between 2006 and 2014, it was an incredibly tumultuous period for the Walt Disney Company. And I suppose it can be summed up in saying that the whole relationship between the brand and the consumer had shifted because of technology and the expectations that shifted those expectations. But in learning and development, I was hamstrung. We had to do everything face to face because and this isn't an uncommon story. We had a clunky LMS that was difficult to use, full of generic e-learning that nobody found valuable. So we just tried to drive traffic towards it to justify the investment, whilst we did everything we needed to do one class at a time. And I'm afraid with thousands of people, you can't do that. So in essence, we're doing things the hard way, and you've got to admit that you're not making much of a difference at all if you're just doing things one class at a time. So I joined Loop. It was coincidental. I saw Loop the first time the week after I left Disney at an exhibition, and Ben, one of the founders, showed me it, and I said to him, my exact words were, "This is the first piece of learning technology that I would use." And that's a huge admittance, because I think I'd spent 15 years just thinking, well, one day it will come of age. One day it will come of age. And then thinking, I hope this is soon, because I can't continue to sell this and put my name to these platforms and this content. Now, I worked closely with the guys at Loop, helping to advise on different applications that they could put the platform to, until I got a call one day, and Ben's words to me were, "Do you fancy joining the dark side?" And of course, that's the vendor side. And I suppose that's the where the rest of this conversation can go from.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, so on that note, because I think this is a common problem in learning and development, is we've got this content, we've got these different platforms. So with Loop, and this is probably one of the most important things for me when we start talking about outcomes. Let's focus on the outcomes of this versus the bells and whistles and the capabilities, which I think is probably the most important part of learning technology and transformation, is figuring out what are you trying to solve. So let's look at it twofold, and I'd be interested on your insights on this. So for Loop, what business outcomes is it really trying to solve for? Something that's going to resonate with, if we have our CHROs listening, other business leaders who may be curious, what is this Loop thing? What kind of business outcomes is it trying to drive? But also twofold, from a learning and development standpoint, I feel like there's a lot of operational things or things that we struggle with that we go, this is really tough for us. We spend a lot of time spinning our wheels here. And how does Loop solve those problems?
Okay, so look, and to address the elephants in the room on here, what I've known from experience and from platforms and content that I've seen, that as optimistic as you wish to be, LMS is full of content will not affect performance and capability.
Does Loop know you're saying this?
Sorry.
Does Loop know you're saying that?
I'm going to stop
We're
the live
live
stream
right now, Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the live stream.
I think that the expectation of technology in learning and development is, first of all, it's not high enough. I think it's at a very base level. It's almost as if we, as a profession, say, well, we know that we're only going to affect real change, whether that's in behavior or mindsets, if we can see the person in a room. So we then expect so little from technology, and we say, well, we just need an online provision. We just need to have somewhere where people can go in their own time. And it's almost justified and say, well, they'll go to Google or they could go to ours, and ours is going to be richer and, you know, and more valuable because we vetted it and all of that stuff. But what we say at Loop is that you've got to expect more. And we expect more, and it's not just disrupted, but it's enhanced all of our lives, our ability to connect with people, their ideas, their expertise in service of what we're trying to do on an everyday basis. And look, LMS is, look, before I slam this shut, look, they've been really great at taking the pain away from compliance, the administration of compliance. The pain of compliance we've just outsourced, we've just given that to the employee. But the administration, we've taken that away. But we've always struggled with engagement, let alone the performance and capability side. So what we do is we seek to understand, and this is where Loop is a technology platform that's underpinned by a robust approach that's grounded in product management, digital product management, because guess what? Anybody who is saddled with learning technology has got to see themselves as a product manager, and a product manager will make sure that they are solving the real problems of the people that they're seeking to influence. There's no shortcut here. You can't put bells and whistles on a platform and make it visually appealing and expect people to go, do you know what? I thought this was rubbish before, but now you've added a leaderboard. It's fantastic. Like if it's not,
you get like a badge, right?
If it's not solving the real problems that people are facing as their primary concerns in the context of their work, at the time that they feel that friction, then they won't engage. So we're all around. So it's a user-centered focus on helping people to do the things that they're trying to do at the time that they're facing unfamiliar situations and challenges for the very first time. And one of the other elephants in the room as well, if I may say, no one is going to go to your learning platform if they've got 5 minutes. They're not. They're going to talk to a colleague, or if they're going to stay online, they're going to go onto Google. You've lost. So what we recognize as well is that if you want to influence people, you've got to get to where they are. So you've got to run campaigns that show them and share the value at the time that you anticipate that they need that, ideally integrated with the tools they use for work. So you're not creating additional facilities or academies or universities where people go to learn. You are giving them what they need when they need it in order to perform and do stuff that they couldn't do more efficiently without it. So that kind of is in a nutshell. But when you ask specifically, Christopher, what results, what performance, what results, this is whatever those people are charged with. This is whatever is important to the organization. And that's why we believe wholeheartedly in equipping L&D with digital capability to understand and read data. Go and make friends with the data guys, business information, HR systems, to find out your critical points of failure in your organization. Experiment with the users to try to solve their problem, and only use tech to scale and ultimately to automate. It's a different conversation from, hey, plug in this new Wizzy platform, and by the way, the content's animated, so people will love it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Bass on LinkedIn said an LMS is like a toolbox. You don't throw the whole toolbox at the problem you're solving. You pick the right tool for the job and the situation. So,
and I do think, right, to some degree, LMSs have gotten a little bit of a bad rap, in my opinion. They've been we as an industry have tried to use them for things they were never intended to do. And then when it doesn't work, right, it's the LMS's fault. But I'm curious, so the concept you talk about, bringing information to people at the time they need it, right? This whole workflow learning concept is big, right? It's the buzzword. And part of my goal is to kind of cut through the fluff of, okay, right, but how does that work? So you talked about, it's reaching people where they are when they need it. How does Loop do that? Does it integrate with other systems? Does it have intelligence behind it that's pushing content? How does that work? Just very simply.
Yeah, sure. So we can do this at various levels, but it starts with the idea and it starts with the expectation. I always say learning and development lacks vision and leadership a lot of the time. So understand what you are looking to affect, and then imagine how that would work. Then use the tools in order to affect it. But there are different ways of doing so. So first of all, this is user-centered. You are looking to understand what people are trying to do and what's stopping them from doing this efficiently. If you were doing this in software development or as a product manager, you bring those people together to find out what it is that they're trying to do. In learning and development, you can do exactly the same. So if in let's take something that we're all familiar with, say induction or new manager development.
Yeah, sure.
You bring a load of new starters in together, and you try to find out what is it you're trying to do as you come into the organization. You're only going to get a few things. You're trying to pass the probation. You're trying to get the right things done. You're trying not to look foolish, and you're trying to prove that you are the right hire. Okay, what's getting in the way? What's stopping you from doing that? Then, if you could do that, I mean, that's just going to take Post-it notes and a white wall. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to visualize, and as a group, as a cohort of people, with you as the L&D person, with the recent new starters, so that you've got something on the wall. You step back and say, that looks like a solution. You're telling me that those things are the things that were getting in the way. Put them into some kind of chronology so that you can approximate when that would be required in order to address the needs of the individuals. Now, what we've got with Loop is a way of rapidly taking that stuff, popping it into the tool, getting local know-how, so getting subject matter experts to answer these questions, wrap those up. And it might be simple. I mean, there are resources. So it might be a screen recording. It might be a blog or an article. It could be a video headshots. But you're trying to find the most efficient way of getting that individual from not knowing to doing in the shortest possible time. So we wrap that up for you in Loop in a way that people would expect. Then what we've got a campaigns engine, so you can glue those events together. So you're creating one digital experience that also supplements and enhances face-to-face. So you can see that, and then by connecting it in with the tools that people use for work, whether that be Teams, it could be Slack, it could be as simple as email, then people are notified that at this time, it's anticipated that you will need this. And then you can look at the dashboard to see how close you're getting to the point of need. And you can do that by, number one, are you getting engagement? Because if this is a real problem and you're getting there to influence the way the work is done at the point it's required, you're going to get high spikes of engagement. Usefulness is a key indicator, and what's missing? What else do people need in order to perform? But it's all about the work. So this isn't about learning. The huge misunderstanding of learning in the flow of work is that you've got somebody who's busy doing work, they're given permission, or they've got some downtime to go and learn something from some content. And
take
because
a break
it's been
and go take an e-learning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So and then you're gonna look at this stuff. It's a short burst, and so because it's short, it's gonna be easy to remember, and then you're gonna carry on. When I describe that, it's bananas. Nobody would do that. This is all about anticipating what people are trying to do, and then providing them with the tools in order to get them from that unfamiliar situation to actually performing. And of course, you won't always get this right, but the predictability of this is unbelievable. I always give the example: get recent new starters in the room together and start a stopwatch. Ask them what challenges they had when they first started, and you're going to stop the stopwatch when someone says that happened to me as well, because they're not coming to terms with the technical aspects of the role. They're bumping up against your culture, And this is so predictable that you're able to anticipate this and help and guide people to do the right things at the right time so that they can then benefit from the aggregated expertise within your organization.
So let me ask you this, right? Because you talked about this workflow management piece, which I think is a big part of it. It's the workflow mapping. And I think this is often a step that's missed is we make assumptions about, well, this is how work is done, or worse, we just say, yeah, people take a break and go watch some content and then come back to things. And that's not how it works.
No.
Is that step in the process part of Loop, or is that something that you do outside of Loop and then you map that back into the system?
No, you do it in Loop. After you've got your white wall and you've got your Post-it notes, you should be looking at a solution. Going back to one of your earlier points about performance and results, when you've got the people in the room, you want to be asking them, if we fix this, will the people coming through the door next be able to do more efficiently do what you were trying to do? And then it's a case of yes or no. If it's yes, then we run an experiment. This will take, if you've got a wall full of stuff, we're talking half a day's worth of work in order to get this out and get it in front of people who need it. Because you've got nothing until you've got data, until it's in being road tested by people who need this. But you're running small experiments to move the needle. And that's, but it's all in Loop.
You're doing all that, you're doing that in Loop, right? So you're creating, that's the whole campaign manager.
Totally, yeah.
Because you're mapping this out, you're putting it in there, you're running it and seeing, hey, is this actually helping people get through these little burst campaigns? And if not, you're adjusting your campaign along the way to the point you got it right.
Totally.
So it's like, okay, great. Now everybody's doing it.
And you'll always iterate. There will always be variables, but you're going to get really close with the work we do with our clients. You get really close. And you asked about integrations, and I wanted to explain there first what we'd be doing. But you'll integrate with an HR system for new managers that recognizes. Right, so you've just become a manager. You pop into a new campaign. At the same time, you've become a budget holder and you work in sales. So this is connecting you to different campaigns that guide and support you to overcome the challenges and unfamiliar situations you face in each of those roles. So that's all mapped out. But then as a new manager, if you put in a hiring request, you jump into another campaign about hiring people in the context of your role.
Of trigger. There's some sort of trigger that's triggering the campaigns that's then saying, okay, we recognize the system recognizes this thing's happening. And now as a result, we're going to fire this thing that we've mapped out with people who actually have done the work instead of from the Crystal Palace. And then this is what it's doing. It's running people through that cycle. Now, two questions as a follow-up to that, because I think it's important, is one, that sounds easy, right? In theory. And it just in my years of doing this, sometimes you get into those discussions and it's tough because you've been in the company, maybe is that something that is part of an implementation? Does Loop help with some of that? Is that part of the implementation is, hey, we've done this for a lot of companies. Part of the package is we help get you started so that you're not like, okay, yeah, we're going to do these campaigns. I don't know what a campaign is. Like, I don't know how to manage this. And now you've just created really bad campaigns that are just frustrating people the same as before.
Yes, 100%. So we've got three levels of implementation. We've got what we call our Kickstarter approach. Now, we've been doing this years. We've been working with clients. And guess what we've learned? We've learned what the common areas of friction are for any distinct group of people. So we've got these Kickstarters, which are templates, which have a load of content in there, but allow you for tailoring and tweaking. You just enter in the name of your HR system. You put in a screen recording of your travel expenses systems, or the information on your dress code, or anything that is causing friction that your people say. We've got these Kickstarters. It is literally fill in the gaps and personalize this. So when your people first see this for the first time, they think, this is for me. Like this isn't generic. This isn't off the shelf content. This is speaking to me in my role. So you gain that trust. So we've got the Kickstarter stuff, which you benefit from years of experience of Loop and how to do it. So we'd always say that as an on-ramp, you'll gain belief in this system. Then you've got the one we just described, which we call the customer journey map, in which there are going to be bespoke things. Sometimes we're brought in for a particular change within an organization, and it is bespoke. And we would lead that entire conversation to keep it on track, but also to show learning and development people, if something is suggested that isn't about learning capability or skills, it's all right to put this up there, because we're going to build a minimum valuable product in which we're going to try to move the needle. So we might only build 12 resources, and even if there are 50 on the wall, because we're going to ask, what is the minimum that we can add in order to move the needle? And then we just add iteratively. We also have a third way, which, learning and development people love to create. And there's already some content. And sometimes, as much as we encourage people to be user focused, not content focused, some people just want to put their stuff in Loop and see how it goes. And we bring the guardrails right in so they can't fail. And we also tell them how they can extract the learning so they can do this better next time. Because sometimes they just want to get going, or they've got sign off already for an approach and some content, and they've just got to get it going. They do come back because it makes perfect sense to be user-focused and only address the friction that people experience. And they're primary drivers for wanting to engage in the first place, rather than creating perhaps educational content that we might be used to.
Do you also help them with the communication piece as well?
Yeah, we've got...
And onboarding?
Yeah,
That's
completely. So the campaigns that we've got have all got templates within them as well to engage people, and it's all around tell me why this is important to me, show me, tell me, or inspire me, and then help me on my way. So it's activating people, recognizing that if we're catching people at the moment of need, they just want to be able to more confident and competently do, based on the insights and the know-how of the organization. So yeah, we've got all of those templates. And that's when we teach people about being user-focused, not being verbose, but being straight to the point, respecting people's time. And when you see a campaign as well, and it's got 20 different touch points, you realize you don't have to overwhelm at the outset. So much of learning and development is, the crimes that we create for ourselves are trying to make use of the resources that we have available to us. So we've only got 2 hours with people on their first day. So tell them everything we know. New managers,
nothing sticks.
Yeah. So you've got new managers. You kind of thinking, well, we come with all of our courses are full, so let's try to catch them in their first 3 years. This is all about helping people when they actually need that help. And if you are getting close, seriously, it changes the entire relationship that people have with learning and development.
So let me do this, because I've got a couple things to follow on that. And the first one is that this concept of campaigns, the workflow management, the automation behind it, is where you start treading into some of the buzz where people start throwing out the word artificial intelligence, right? Oh, because artificial intelligence is as vague as a machine doing something that a human would normally do, which could mean just about anything. So when somebody says AI is part of this, you're like, yeah, okay, right. But what exactly is it doing? Now, is that something that Loop is looking at in automating some of this stuff? Because what you described is awesome. I think it's fair to say that's no shortage of work that has to be done. It's not something that you do overnight. Now, is that something that you're looking at AI or machine learning to help improve? So instead of somebody having to manually do that, it's automating?
So the answer is yes. And there is technology that exists right now that will write the resources for you. We know this. I think that Elon Musk has been, one of his companies has been on the vanguard of this, and they're holding it back because, from ethical purposes, what's it going to mean if AI can write news articles and stories that can't be distinguished between what a human will write? So that's being held back. But there is technology right now that will write the resources for you. And that's something we've got a close eye on. As far as the customer journey mapping, what we've found, if we look at customers like Sky in the UK, they have grown in their sophistication to find out and explore what the real needs are. And over the last 3 years where they've been doing this, they've ended up spending more time in the discovery phase, because they've realized that the more that you understand as people what people are trying to solve, it takes less time then to build and then the automation, it kind of looks after itself. Whereas what we used to do in learning and development is looking for your silver bullets, quick fix, plug it in and off you go. But it's counterproductive, because whereas you will save a hell of a load of time with the discovery because you're not finding out what the real problems are. Have you spent 5 years? I spent 8 years in an organization wearing the LMS around my neck like a millstone, trying to justify the expenditure and trying to drive traffic towards it. That's harder than really working on what the real requirements are. And this is one of the shifts we need to make. But this is, we're not making stuff up in L&D here. We're following marketing. We're following software development. We're following professions that have changed, because personalizing and adapting your solutions to meet specific needs of people doesn't just change the end game and what we can expect to achieve with digital approaches. But as far as achieving them and getting real results, it's a total game changer. So as far as the creation and the discovery element is concerned, we're always looking for smarter ways to make that more efficient. But on the AI side, we don't see that the recommendation of content is where we should be applying our attention. Okay. Imagine, and this is considering that some of our roadmap here, but imagine you've got a dashboard that tells you where you are in relation to the business goals that you're seeking to affect. Like, so you plugged in, you understand, you got your data, you're plugged into your business information, and you can see how your experiments are moving the needle as far as the business KPIs that they care about are concerned.
How these campaigns are impacting them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're able to see and this is where we're developing the AI, is that your dashboard tells you what else you can be doing in order to move the needle in the right direction. It flags to you and says, of your campaigns, it seems that the longer the campaign goes on, and of course this is me expanding this for the listeners' understanding. But you imagine go the tail end of your campaign is getting very little hits, and this is the point. This is in conjunction where people's performance is tailing off. You need to address this, but so it's actually guiding you to and suggesting ways that you can get better results by looking at some further areas, thinking that'd be amazing. It's like then your dashboard's like a cockpit in which you drive your L&D function based on real business and performance insights.
Now, that's just to clarify, that's where you're going. That's
where we're going. Yeah,
that's where you're going. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of that, go ahead.
And just for everyone in the comments section, we're not going to jump into a screen share and go through all of the functionality in this episode. But I'm sure if you want to reach out to David, I'm sure he'll be happy to jump online with you or member of the team to share that, because I know a lot of you are asking, can we see it?
Yeah, can we see it? We want to see it.
So can I answer that question for everyone?
Yeah. And the thing is with this is that it's not a system where you take a look at it and it's filled with content and you'd say, oh, look, that's going to solve all my problems. We would walk through some of your business problems, some of the things you're looking to affect, and then we'd show you how this actually works in your context. So at the end of a demo, you'd look and say, I can see how this would work, but you can see how you wouldn't be able to do that with a generic example.
Now, some of that, though, right, and this, I think, gets into maybe some of the challenges that somebody considering Loop would look at, right? That's a mindset shift. And I think that's a tough mindset shift for L&D to make, is to say, well, this is how we've been doing it for so long. And from what you've described, that's a completely different approach, right? So if you're not there, do you see that when you work with new customers? Does that... And we mentioned this, David James, when we talked last, the Stockholm syndrome. Do you see that rear its ugly head where people go, I kind of get it, but I'm really comfortable over here, and you have to kind of pull them forward? Is that a sticking point?
Yeah, I'd say that generally happens in a second meeting, and this is where we've got to be on our mettle, because when somebody says, I'd love to see the platform, we actually walk them through. They've got the time, they see it and go, that's amazing. Then they go back and then they give their version to their boss, and their boss is like, I told you to go and get an LMS full of e-learning. What is the matter with you? So then they invite these guys in and start talking about outcomes and performance and customer journeys and, integrating with the tools they use for work. And it's like, whoa. Rewind, because when I was doing their job, I just put it in an LMS and it was job done. And then then we talk about the opportunity with digital. And I make the distinction between technology-enabled learning and digital. Now, of course, shoot me down for creating buzzwords, but we need distinctions between what we used to do and what is possible now. And so this is how I make the distinction. Technology-enabled learning helped learning and development scale its offering. So it enabled us to put our classrooms on computers. Right? And that was, and then find, with webinars, we're able to then get to people live on their computers. So that's technology-enabled learning. Digital, when you look at something like Amazon isn't just a great shop. Amazon has fundamentally changed the way you replace stuff in your home or fill gaps from a consumer perspective really fast and efficiently. So it's next door. You don't go shopping on Amazon. It's a completely different reframe, and this is what I think that we've got to take a look at with L&D. It's not.
Right. What you're saying, I think, is a fair point, and I think that's what a lot of folks in our industry think of when they think of digital learning. Why it tanks and why people don't believe in it, because historically we've taken the classroom, we've tried to stuff it into a digital box and say, ta-da, like digital learning, and people have said, well, that's awful, like that's nothing, like this is the worst of everything that we liked. You got rid of all the stuff we liked and gave us nothing in return, where this is a completely different approach.
That's right. Yeah, it's not about L&D. This is user-centered. Right. So this isn't about how I can get my stuff to you. It is how I can help you do the stuff that you are brought into the organization to do, and then help you to overcome your challenges and unfamiliar situations more efficiently than you would if you fumbled along or tried to make the connections or brought an expert in every time that you needed to. It just brings up the rails and guides and supports you to more confident and competent doing. So again, it's a massive reframe.
Yeah, it is. Well, and that goes back to the mindset shift piece. Now, a couple things on this, because the reality is, and this is sometimes where I myself have been, I've seen it with other folks I work with. You look at this and it's like, holy smokes, this is overwhelming. You're asking us to change all the content we've done. You're asking us to change the whole process, the whole mindset. Like, that is a lot. I don't know if I'd go that far. Now, couple things on that. The classroom for a lot of organizations, it's still there. And that was one thing the LMS did do well was, hey, you need to schedule something, people can enroll, we need to waitlist them, we can do that. Does Looop still have that capability, even though, yes, the goal is to move to this digital? Can it still handle that? Or would you have to have another tool that can manage that? No,
it does all of that stuff. It still takes the administration away. So we've got booking and scheduling for classroom training or meetings. Like we've call it events, because I think like what you're alluding to there is that it doesn't have to be training. You just bring people together for the right thing at the right time. So you have the events element. We have SCORM as well, because we don't want to advocate throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What we are advocating is when it really matters and you really want to help affect performance and capability, on the next time it really matters, let's show you how. And so you can keep everything running, but you can keep
doing it.
Yeah, but you'll get to a stage once you're getting results this way that I'm describing, user-centered, resources before courses, integrated with the tools they use for work and into their flow of work. You'll be looking at a lot of stuff and saying, well, how do we do that the same way then? And that's when you could begin the transition. But it's not about throwing everything away or saying that the skills that we've had are now redundant. But we do need to admit, in the same way as marketing has had to do in the last 15 years, you have to adapt.
We need to change.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Just out of interest, go. I was just out of interest, David, I speak to chief learning officers every single day, right? CHROs, and they're inundated with new LMS providers.
Of course.
It's like every day there's a new shiny object that comes across their desk they're going to claim to solve all of their problems, right? How do you differentiate yourself to your competitors and get through all of that noise in the landscape? Because I'm sure it must be really tough to reach these guys.
Yeah, it is. And so we talk about outcomes, not products. And it's as simple as that. So we make the distinction that we work with and for your clients. We don't want to throw too many buzzwords in, but for the benefit here, we advocate agile, which is you work with and for your clients iteratively in order to solve their problems. I suppose one of the big things is that, and sometimes I don't even mention it because it's a given, is that engagement is the least of your worries. Imagine that. You're getting to people when they really need your help. integrated in the flow of work so they can actually do this, overcome their challenges while they're facing them. My God, like, who would not engage? So first of all, we say to people, engagement's the least of your problems, but you will not get engagement by adding bells and whistles to existing content, assuming that there's nothing wrong with your content. It's just that people don't get it, or they need to, one of my pet hates, they need to learn how to learn. So let me
on that one, because I'm curious, and let me reframe it and see if this kind of, and you tell me if I'm on the right track. But because your LMS, and what do you call it? LMS, well, whatever we want to call it, the LXP, blah, blah, blah. But it has the capabilities, but where your competitive differentiator, where Loop's really investing, is this campaign workflow stuff. That's like, look, yes, we can do these other things, but instead of where some platforms may be investing in leaderboards and badging and a slicker content library, it's more of, no, we'll have what we need to get by with that, but where we're really diving deep is, let's perfect this campaign, these workflow streams, so that we can get that. Is that a fair assessment?
So remember that the campaigns and the workflows are a way of affecting performance and results. Yep. You get nowhere unless you're focusing on the real problems, and that's why we've got the approach that supports the platform, because you could create great content, really engaging content. I mean, as I said, we've got SCORM in there, so you can create incredible courses, put them all into a workflow, and still get no engagement. Okay. So it is all about understanding what it is that people are trying to achieve. So it's all about the performance and the results, which, again, I'm going back and trying to solve the problems that I had in the organizations that I was leading, learning and development. That there was no shortage of content, and there's no shortage of platform. I mean, they're big enough, but it's about not having tools that meant that you had to do everything face to face.
Okay. So we talked a little about the fact that it can still manage classroom stuff, because I know with some of the platforms, I've had conversations with them, and I know people freak out a little bit when they're like, well, we don't have that, and now it becomes an issue. So we've covered that, so at least it can meet you where you are there. One of the things that, when I was doing a little research into the platform, that I'm curious about, or if you can elaborate a little bit, is some platforms have content development capabilities. So yes, it's great if you have all this stuff, but as you're trying to move towards this and you're trying to create this more slim, sleek, kind of directed content, is that something that now you still have to consider another tool set for? I know you said if you are using other tools, you can bring that content in, which is great, but does it also have that content creation capability right in the tool, or is that a separate tool set?
No, you create resources in Loop. So that would be your, and you can add text and image, screen recordings, video, quizzes. So you can build that in Loop, and you can publish that immediately. You can put it into a campaign. You can get to people straight away. Those, as long as you've got the expertise, the answers to the questions, and most importantly, the actual situation, question, or challenge that people face in the first place, then you can get that out in no time at all. We don't have e-learning authoring tool within Loop. We have you can import that from wherever you're building it.
Okay, so if you're trying to build some dynamic e-content, something like that, you still would use your standard platform to do that. Exactly. But if it's just, hey, we need to tell people this information, we need to get people this information, you don't also have to and go build it in a separate place. You don't have to.
No. We started off as a resource platform, which is rapidly creating or capturing local know-how, knowledge, and insights so that you could get that to people in service of their jobs. That's where we went. But because engagement is the least of your worries, people had two platforms. They had Loop, and then they had the LMS. But then they kept on saying to us, well, you're leaving money on the table, guys, because if you could host my SCORM, we'd get rid of the other LMS. So that was the no-brainer. And then we went on a rapid charge to make sure that we did compliance better than anyone else. And so what we've got right now is that you put your compliance into a campaigns engine, and it's first of all, it reminds people when they haven't done it. But as soon as they have done it, it drops off. It runs all your admin of chasing your people towards completion of your compliance training. again, removing one of the most worst jobs that that you have of compliance, which is the chasing people to completion. We do that all for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just for everyone on LinkedIn, feel free to ask questions. I'm monitoring the chat, and these guys are going to keep going at it.
Chris is just sitting back like,
they're not going to stop for you guys anyway, and I'm enjoying it as well. I'm like, but if you have any questions, now's the time. So, all right, just throwing it out there because sometimes people forget they actually even ask questions.
I know that we're just so engaging that they just forget they're just locked in. This is like Netflix binge worthy right here. So on the content though, because this is, I think, something that I feel like not a lot of organizations are maybe there to do anything with it yet, but I see it on the horizon is, engagement with the content. It's clear Loop can look at, okay, we can see how people are using that campaigns. And it sounds like where you're going with an AI standpoint is to look at the effectiveness and efficiency to provide meaningful feedback in that. At this point, is this content that's built in there, are you able to see more than just, they finished the campaign? Because I think that's one of the things that the way content is designed in many platforms now, right? That's the extent of what we get out of it. It's like, well, they did it. I have no idea what they did with it. I have no idea anything. And so our solution to that is like, oh, let's throw a quiz at the end because that really tells us something meaningful versus, okay, did they get stuck? Did they go through the whole thing? What kind of analytics, I guess, if you will, is there on this beyond just, okay, they finished it?
So we've got anything from, excuse me, what device they use, when they did this, how long they were in there. We've got usefulness ratings because we're all about, it's got to be useful. It's got to be addressing a real need. So we've got usefulness ratings. We've got, we ask for feedback, how to make it more useful. So we've got, if it can be done in the platform, then we measure it. But as far as, and we can show you how far they got into any particular piece of content as well. That's if it can be done, then it can be then it can be seen.
Well, and what's interesting about that, I was with one organization, and on that topic, right? We were able to see some of that, and this is where we started building meaningful insights. And one example that we found was nobody was finishing this thing, right? We had this campaign and nobody was finishing it. And initially the reaction was, oh, this is a failure. And what we found is as we dug into the analytics and started talking to people, we realized that, no, that's just as hard. That's just where their struggle stopped. They got to that point and they went, I don't need help anymore. It got me to, so we were actually able to cut a ton of content out because we went, well, 99% of people only need help to this point. So why would we make this whole rest of this stuff? Nobody cares. They don't need help after that point. So there are some value to that.
And that's what we talk about with the dashboard. Sorry, Chris.
Christopher, how did you go about discovering that? By the way, just practically.
So, I mean, practically, and we won't get into the tools we were using, but that was the analytics. And that's why I'm always curious from a content standpoint, can I see more than just, yes, finished, no, didn't finish, or yes, they passed a test, no, they didn't pass a test, because we were able to get those analytics out of, okay, how long did they spend in it? How far through this did they go before they stopped? And then that allowed our team to kind of do some follow. I mean, it'd be great if you could throw AI at it, which is like what you said, where it could then tell us, hey, 95% of people? We found it manually, which I think that's where technology is going to change things.
Yeah.
So from an infrastructure standpoint, this is something that I think a lot of organizations may not necessarily anticipate is, what does that look like to support a platform like this? I think when we think of LMSs, we think, okay, we've got to have admins, we've got, they got to do all this assignment, and we've got to have all this stuff. We've got to have content developers doing all of that. Does Loop follow that same structure? Is it simplifying some of that? What type of resources do you anticipate needing on a team to effectively use Loop? Because it sounds like Loop's a tool. If you didn't change your mindset, you didn't change the way you were doing things, Loop could still potentially be something that isn't driving the performance that it's intended to do.
Yeah, that's right. So it requires people focused on solving the real problems. And we live in a digital world. Like if we took some people out of classrooms and applied them to solving the real problems as they're being faced, we'd solve a hell of a lot more. So first of all, there's the paradigm shift. Now, there are organizations such as Sky who have teams, pull squads together in order to discover what the real problems are, to build the content within an experiment, and then run close by the client to make sure that what they end up scaling actually works. So there's a significant number of people supporting 30,000. But we run customer collaboration calls, and we ran one in the last couple of months for our retail customers. And one of the new customers said that they're worried because they don't have a lot of resource. And then one of our more established customers said, I do this on my own. I do all of this. I am the only person in learning and development. But I think the retailer are in a unique position because the learning and development team, a lot of the time, know the real problems, don't they? They are laser focused on solving real problems that manifest as people leaving or not performing, stores, for example, not performing. So they know what to address. And this was one example where they built resources that they could get to people on the campaign when it was actually required, and guiding people during that. Their transitions, and perhaps where they were the biggest risk to the company, both staying and messing things up or leaving after not too long. So you can do this one of two ways. It doesn't take a huge amount of administration. And the thing is as well is what's different from addressing real problems and friction that people experience as opposed to programs is, remember when we build programs, a lot of it is on assumptions, and we're filling days, right? Yes. So we're creating programs that are heavy, and require scheduling and then delivery. So they're really long and heavy. We're talking about laser focused on specific problems that if you're creating minimum valuable products of say 12 resources that could be glued together and then nudge people and integrated with their tools to guide and support them over a particular journey. They're really focused, they're really light, and it takes a fraction of the time. And creating resources in a campaign takes even a real fraction of the time it takes to create e-learning as well. It's a real massive paradigm shift for us.
Okay. So you're just to clarify, you're not going on record telling everyone that they only need one person to run.
No. But I'm saying that our preconceptions of what
David, I'm
kidding. we actually rent this one person out to
we just rent them out. There's just one for the whole thing. That's all.
We have customer success managers who will run projects like for customers to shadow them so they can see it. A lot of this stuff is breaking down the fear of, well, I've never done this before. And this is so exciting to actually go from nothing to get a subject matter expert in, to do a screen recording. They're doing the voiceover. You finish it off and then you go, we never have to run that training again. It's like, that's amazing. We've got one client who they hire general managers in, and one of the major points of friction is that these general managers are expected to use this system, and like a lot of systems like the LMS we've been describing, they're cumbersome and they're difficult to use. But the training's only done every 3 months because it's run by subject matter experts. So you imagine being an unlucky general manager who comes joins the day after the last training was done. All they did was screen recordings, wrap this up into resources, put it on a campaign, and when anybody then becomes a general manager in the HR system, it's the first thing they get. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's solving a real problem, whereas the old way of delivering the training, which would be seen the high value experience, was actually creating problems. So it's just one way that a short intervention, lightweight intervention, can make such a massive difference to the end user.
Now, from a lightweight standpoint, do you have people that open up, and this can be a touchy subject for L&D people because they can freak out a little bit, is letting subject matter experts actually build some of these campaigns where instead of saying, oh no, we're the gatekeeper, we're the only people who know how to do this stuff, so everything has to funnel through us. Do you have clients that say, hey, you know what? We've got this platform, it's slick. We're going to actually empower some folks to run this themselves. So instead of us having to be the bottleneck for everything, do you have people doing that?
They do, but they don't do it for long because, if you take, user-generated content is a hot topic at the moment, but you've only got to take a look at page 2 of your YouTube search to realize that it takes a specific skill to be able to do so. So what we don't have, I mean, our platform enables that, and we don't want to say to people, not because tech teams especially, they're pretty savvy at this stuff. They're pretty good at sharing and bottling up what they know in the context of how others will use it. But elsewhere, we're not so good. What we want to do is we want to tell people what we know. And a lot of the time, that's not what's needed. So the critical point always comes back to, what is it the problem? What's the problem that we're trying to solve? What's the friction that the end user is experiencing? Then the smart way that we say smart, it's more efficient, is get a subject matter expert to answer that question, to address that particular situation with their insights and their experience. Then learning and development can just add that last eye of quality assurance to make sure that what goes out is the most efficient way of addressing this. What they might pull out or split into half are more than what's required. But what we've got to remember, that end users trying to work. They're trying to get something done. They need insight that's going to open up a door for them to be able to do something to improve their prospects or just get the job done. And that's what we're trying to provide.
Well, and in my experience, I've seen, right, this user-generated content thing's a can of worms when you dig into it, because I think sometimes the mindset is, yeah, we'll just let the subject matter experts do it, and it a lot of times doesn't go well. Or again, you're now asking them to do something in addition to their job, and they are just like, I just want to do my job. Like, I don't want to be building content for, this platform. Now, granted, it can work, but that's helpful to see. Some people have kind of gone down that path and said, it doesn't eliminate L&D's role, it just shifts it, because now the work you're doing is over here instead of over here. You're no less relevant. It's just the work you're doing, if anything, is more relevant to it.
Yeah.
So one final question, and then kind of wrap up here. I think Bass asked a really good question, and that was, this whole showing business value, and this is something that I think is an important thing, is historically, I think sometimes we've tried to show business value through completions of stuff, right? Hey, look how many campaigns we did. Look how many other things, where the business metrics aren't held in an LMS typically.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how does Loop, as you look at an implementation like that, how do you work with those business metrics so that the story they're telling of, hey, okay, these campaigns have happened, but so what? What's that connection? Is that something in Loop, or is that something that you work with clients on how to build that story?
So this is what clients are already doing, and this is and this goes back to the very heart of why we get good engagement. You solve a real problem. You need to understand what a problem is. Your best bet's the data. So at the moment, we advocate go make friends with those who have access to the data. But we help with what you're looking for. And let me give you an example. So if we're going to start with, again, we do induction. If we look at the real problem that we're looking to solve, what we always ask is, what would happen if you did nothing? What if you didn't support people at all? Then you get to the real issue. You go, well, people wouldn't be ready, right? So we go, what's the readiness metric? People would leave. People wouldn't be engaged. People would stay and they wouldn't perform. All of these valuable insights that you can gain. Now, at the moment, we say that will be your benchmark. But this is what we're building, that dashboard in Loop, that the roadmap we said, where you've got your custom business metrics on an initiative page that said, this is your ground zero. You might even want to put your previous 6 months data in. And then what we'll do is, when we run experiments, because it's all about people doing the right things at the right time, we're going to see what effects we have on that data. Okay. So that's how we connect. But it all starts with, and this is, we going right back to the beginning, one of your first questions about why I've got involved with Loop. We had a resource platform that when you took a look, you thought, I'd use that. But we tripped over with, well, why wouldn't other people? And it all comes back down to, no one will use it if it's not useful in the context of what it is that I am trying to do. And the data and the business metric element is just making sure that you are staying aligned to what it is that people need, and you're not just creating content based on gut feeling or minimal observation or stakeholder weighting. So it's just to keep us on track.
Okay. I thought of one more thing that I had on my list, and then we didn't get to it.
How much is it?
It shouldn't be too big. It shouldn't be too big. So this is one, and actually, I'm just curious your perspective on this, right? when people, because the reality is a lot of companies have a platform today, right? And so if they're looking at making the switch, there's this big elephant in the room of, oh my word, we have to move all the stuff from that to that. And that feels like just overwhelming. So one, does Loop have the ability to do some migration work? But I guess the bigger question is, with this big fundamental shift, do you find people end up migrating everything, or do they say, you know what, this is a completely different approach? Maybe now's the time to rethink it. Because what I've seen over the years is a lot of times people make these shifts and they just move the trash from this landfill to this landfill, and then they're like, well, it's getting more of the same.
So you've just called it trash, and you're asking me to answer that question. I think you just answered it. But you have answered it. You have answered the question. No one was going to this stuff. I mean, going back, like I'd say, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Right. So what we advocate massively is run an experiment. Run an experiment to see how this works. So you're talking about pricing, Chris. What we say to people is, and which I think is a real point of differentiation with Loop, is, right, we will give you Loop for a cost. It might just be $1,000 to run an experiment. We will run alongside you to show you, well, to expand what your expectations of technology. You'll see this in action. Then we don't have to say to you, hey, come and put your trash in our platform, right? They look and say, do we need all of that stuff? For which we will ask, well, we'll ask the question back. I don't know. But if you're asking me that question, you've got some serious questions to be asking yourself. Now, we don't believe that Loop is the answer in the same way as one website is the answer on the whole of the internet. But what we do advocate is that if you are choosing the right tools to address the right problems, because you might not want to just create bespoke content that's contextually relevant for all of your areas. You might want to get Pluralsight in. You might want to get another trusted content developer. You might go Harvard Managed Mentor and plug it in. But what we'd say is, don't just launch some stuff onto your audience and expect them to go. Engage with them, find out what they're really trying to do and what's stopping them, and then give them access to the tools that you think will help to move the needle. So you haven't got, 5 years down the line, you bought Loop, you've filled it full of trash, and now you're thinking, now it's unmanageable. We probably need to clear out, or we need to move on. It's about the right tools for the right thing. So, I think just building on what you said there, if it's not working, there's going to be good reason it's not working. And I think a lot of it is that we've become product launchers rather than product managers. And I think we need to take full responsibility for understanding what it is we're trying to achieve and use smart tools to achieve that. Let's stop buying platforms and content and looking for problems to solve with them.
Perfect. Well, thanks, David, for the time. For those of you watching, hey, this has been really good. And we joked about this in the beginning. We're like, the three of us could probably just keep going. And
I'm so happy to take a back seat. I'm so happy just to sit here and for the first time and not have to be, I'm like, this is great. We can do this all the time.
I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, right. Sounds good.
Hopefully you guys enjoy. Where can people learn more, David? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you if they have any questions or want to reach out?
So the website is loop.co. So it's loop with 3 O's.co. It's got information on the approach, on the platform, and the pricing as well. But if they want to contact with me, I'm on Twitter @DavidInLearning. And if they want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm always commenting on Christopher's posts. So you'll find me via that.
Oh, one of us. It works. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Thanks for being our guinea pig, right? This was the first launch. This was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully everybody watching got some extremely valuable stuff out of it. And we'll be back next week.
Fantastic. And if everyone listening, in the comment section, there'll be a link so you to subscribe to the podcast. So make sure you subscribe there so you never miss out. Now, when you're riding your bike to work or on a train, you've got us to listen to. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but but it's there, guys. And also, David, your own podcast. Where can we subscribe to your podcast as well?
Yeah, so the Learning and Development Podcast, you'll find it wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be iTunes, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. I think we're on all the main ones.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for everyone for listening, and thanks for Christopher and Dave for taking over our LinkedIn Live today. It's been a pleasure. And who do we have next week? Can we do a plug?
Yeah, we can do a plug. So next week we've got Nick Howe from Area 9. We're going to be talking about adaptive learning and what that looks like and how Area 9 Lyceum is approaching that. So I'm excited for that one.
Amazing. Well, apart from that, we'll let you all go, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks, right?
Yes. No, yeah. Next week. Next Thursday.
Week. Oh, next
Thursday.
Week. See? Next week. We're back again, guys. All right.
We're back again.
Yeah. Fantastic. We'll see you later, everyone. Have a good evening. Thanks a lot.